few of my things. This was a story, and I apologize for playing a clip of a woman on the channel talking. I apologize. Hopefully, we'll make up for it at a later date.
Is concerned. There are long-term disabilities, there are situational disabilities, there are temporary disabilities. It counts as a disability where a video game like Elden Ring is concerned if you have a kid. You have a 2-year-old, you're trying to play Elden Ring, you can't pause. That is a situational disability that you have, where the game not having the option.
Yeah. So people were upset about her saying that having a kid is a situational disability. Personally, I'm more offended at the fact that they use the term disability. I'm like, I don't know if it's the same person here, but having a kid can be a situational disability where accessibility is concerned. If you this whole, I brought this up before, the whole accessibility discussion or argument or whatever you want to call it, community on Twitter is some of the lamest stuff ever. It's this sort of like shaming language, and it's incredibly female, where it's like, oh, how come your game doesn't have X? This isn't, friendly. This isn't accessible to people with disabilities. And of course, they've expanded. Give a white woman long enough, and she'll find a way to sort of fit herself into this space of disabilities, because you know what? She's got a kid. So it's a situational disability where the kid, he's about to stick a fork in an electric socket, and you got to like run to save him, or like, oh, his tablet, the tablet, ran out of Cocoa Melon to play, so she actually has to go up and spend some time with him. So you got, what if you're in the middle of fighting a boss in Elden Ring? What are you going to do then? Why isn't there a pause button in Elden Ring? This isn't accessible to people with situational disabilities. This whole, I hate the disability argument because, one, it is such it's totally based on shaming language. Like, oh, I have this situation I can't control. Having a kid, I think, kind of is a situation you could control. But that's here nor there. Good for her. She's reproduced. And then you got guys like Mudahar, like, oh, it's not the wildest. What a simp. And then he points out this got almost 200K likes. It's not a big ass, but I think the discussion about the pause buttons in a game like Elden Ring and Dark Souls is actually a kind of an interesting argument, because they intentionally don't put pause buttons in it. And there's a channel that I enjoy listening to called the Electric Underground that has made the argument that like there is a pause button in these games. It's called don't move. If you're in the middle of a fight, you're going to die, but most of the time you don't move forward. The enemies don't like run and find you. You don't actively get into combat. But this idea that like when you're in the middle of a fight, it cannot be paused, I think is actually pretty fun, and it makes it different than other games. And like in a game like a shmup, there is a pause button, because in like a shmup, it's constantly scrolling and there's literally no break in combat. You can't just stop. There's no fire, place to, or whatever the fire thing in Elden Ring is. There's no rest area in these games. And this idea that basically once you get in a fight, you can't stop the fight, I think is actually kind of cool, and it really fits in what makes sort of Elden Ring and Dark Souls unique to video games in general. This idea that you shouldn't always have convenience. Like the players don't always have to have convenience. And in some ways, it makes the game worse. Like when I have like these quests that I've been doing in like these MMO or these gacha games, they'll immediately have like this giant exclamation, like red exclamation point, like here's your target, go to it. And in some ways, I'm happy that I can get it done quickly because the quest is lame and just really like, oh, go here, wow, move to a place. That's a really interesting quest. But at the same time, like you've removed any sort of accomplishment, any sort of thought in making this and actually completing this quest. So you just completely trivialized the sort of gameplay, if you can call it that, by adding these accessibility features. So I'm actually glad they don't, and I always hate when I see people advocating for this, especially using like, oh, it's not accessible to people with disabilities. Who cares? To play another game. Or I mean, like I've seen people with Elden Ring, like a guy like using this sort of like mouth thing to control it, like he's like partially paralyzed and using his mouth to beat Elden Ring bosses. Like you can do it. There's nothing stopping him. And then the other thing, I had someone respond say like, you know what, just die then. If you have to and restart. It's not like death actually has any sort of meaningful, like doesn't knock you back in any meaningful way in a game like Elden Ring or Dark Souls. So just put the controller down, take care of your kid. Oh, crazy. I know that's crazy for a woman to have to sacrifice something to take care of